All right. Welcome to Based Basement. This is Gary, Mitch, and Ryan. We are re-recording a podcast due to technical difficulties, so please bear with us. Gonna have some good conversation today. See what we can't resolve. Made the trip up to Duluth from Andover, Minnesota, and excited to be here with you boys. Just filled up with some good Taco John's, and can't beat it.
I'm glad he made it. Bared the weather and all that.
Yeah, it was a fun drive with a snowstorm in the cities today.
Yeah, still blows my mind. Like I said earlier, it's a beautiful day up here. Had no idea it was snowing just an hour or so away.
I mean, it's nice being up north, where it's different in the cities. I mean, most time it's a worse situation. Like when I lived in Bemidji for 5 years, we'd always be 10 degrees colder in the summer and winter. So when it's negative 40 in Monticello, it's negative 50 up there.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd also get probably about half a foot more snow. But you guys have the lake effect here in Duluth, so that's a little different than being more in the center of the state in Bemidji. So I think we got a lot more snow than you guys. So
yeah, that can happen. It can stay a little warmer here, and the water can keep the average temperature a little higher. And you can notice, like, even if you drive your car around by the lake and then you go up the hill, you can just see the temp drop.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of the opposite in the summer too, where it's hotter, then you go closer to the lake and it's a little cooler, and it can be a difference of like 5-10 degrees just up the hill, down the hill.
Is the lake frozen right now?
Probably not.
Okay.
It's probably staying fairly warm.
You gonna go jump in?
No,
Okay. Not this year.
not this year.
All
But
right.
it's probably still around 40 degrees.
Well, what if we had you pull or plunge to raise money for Based Basement?
We
could fucking do that.
We could probably do that.
I'd pay to watch you jump in Lake Superior in middle of February.
Oh my God.
So
Yeah, I don't know how people do that. That's not for me. That's just way too cold.
yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Feels better being dry and clothed and not freezing and
Comfortable,
hypothermia.
sitting at home rather than potentially having a heart attack or whatever's going to happen, going to shock.
I lived on a lake one year in college, and we got drunk and decided to walk around the perimeter in like December, and we didn't know that on the northwest side of the lake there were springs. So we, in our drunken walk halfway across the lake, we started going through some ice, and it's actually kind of cool that like when it first freezes, the water's not that cold because the lake turned over, and it was actually warmer in the lake I felt than it was outside. So it's kind of cool.
It's interesting.
Won't do it again.
Yeah, right. Well, I think Lake Superior would have that right now because it's probably closer to above 30. Whereas right now it's like, 5 degrees outside.
What does it take for the bay to freeze here? Like a couple weeks of negative weather?
Yeah, it takes a lot. Like when it was negative 20 for almost all of January, I think the lake was like 90% frozen.
Wow.
At that point.
What do the ships just break the ice when they come in, or do they not come in the winter?
I don't think there's much going on. I know a guy that does tugboats, and he does the breaking of the ice, and all that stuff. So there's certain time period they run, but from like the end of October, like sometime in November till about February, March, I don't think there's much going on.
That industry is always just fascinating me for some reason. Like I see the boats on the Mississippi River in St. Paul when I used to work down there, and like it's just like crazy to think of like what that job would entail, being on those boats on the river up here on those huge ships all day.
Yeah.
Like, and then just like I've done some like reading into like the ships of the Great Lakes and like how big they are, and like the queens of the Great Lakes that come through Duluth, and just looking how big those ships are, and like the kind of, it's 30-man crew for that huge ship, like not much.
Right.
Like I don't know, it's just always kind of fascinating to me to
Absolutely.
what that career would be like.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm tough enough for it though. I'm too big a bitch.
You'd have to be resilient. I mean, you're out on the water and you're confined to a space with people you have to get along with and work well with. It's something else.
And I don't want Gordon Lightfoot to write a song about me, so.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear about those climate research groups that go up to the North Pole or whatever, around kind of in that Arctic zone. And then they don't realize that it's not ice free and the lanes haven't opened up. So they get stuck, and then they have to have a Russian icebreaker or an American icebreaker come and bust them out of there.
Yeah.
It's always ironic.
Russia saved America again, just like 2016.
God.
That's funny.
We do not condone Russian collusion in this podcast.
Absolutely not. Russian surveillance state.
And how much collusion was there really? I don't know if we ever really verified any of that.
The Trump campaign admittedly didn't know what it was doing. It wasn't coordinated that well.
It was trying to.
Yeah, he was trying to with a meeting, Dodd Jr. and the two Russians and some other people, and it's just the Democrats don't want to take responsibility for their fuck ups, and that's going to bear itself out in November too.
I mean, the Obama White House did spy on the Trump campaign, so I think that if you really wanted to go into what he did, there's going to be a lot of other doors open that they don't necessarily want to.
Yep. I think it would expose their corruption.
I mean,
you open up the floodgates for both sides of the aisle.
Yeah,
there was probably some shady stuff going on to the extent that he was accused of with the Russian collusion. No, probably not. We'll never know. No. You're trying to tell me that it was a 100% clean campaign. There's no such thing as a clean campaign in American politics. Yeah. Plus, I think I've told this to you guys before. The biggest thing I get when everyone's like, "Oh, Russian collusion, shouldn't be president." What country on God's green earth colludes in more foreign elections than the United States?
Interferes with more foreign.
Right. Look at how Bush handled the Iraq.
How many people have we planted?
Yeah. We pretty much sat there and ran the polling booths for them, and in the influence that they had. If you ever read his autobiography, it's pretty good actually. Decision Points is what it's called, and he's a very good writer, very interesting guy. Listen to him tell him story. Everyone thinks he's an idiot, but he's not. He's a goofy guy, but I love the autobiography, and just him talking about the invasion, the putting 2 wars on a credit card. Essentially, doesn't say that obviously, but talking about the reasons. Of course, it's not going to be the truth, but the way he writes, though, it's kind of interesting. It's a good read. It's a 350-page autobiography, so if you need a good reading point.
But he probably taps on the idea, indirectly, probably the idea of regime changes and how they've had effects when it comes to economic sanctions in those countries leading up to the regime changes and all the puppet dictators that we've implemented or installed in the past 5 or 6 decades.
If we're going to do this, we have to do it right, and that's the justification for having America so involved in that. I'm not saying we colluded or anything, we probably did, who knows, but hearing it from the point of view and what he can say, I guess, or what he's willing to say in an autobiography. I know he's kind of mentally. Have you ever seen the paintings he does?
Yeah,
of the soldiers that have been lost. So I think there's probably some guilty conscience or something.
I think most of that is on Dick Cheney, because Dick Cheney, I think, before taking office, to avoid any emoluments violations or whatever, he left Halliburton, and then Halliburton got no bid defense contracts for Iraq. They made, $39.2 billion over the course of the war. A lot of money. And that's the story of war in and of itself. But I agree with that to a great extent, that Bush really wasn't the mastermind behind those 2 wars.
It was Cheney, for
Cheney,
sure.
Rumsfeld, all those ass clones.
At the same time,
malevolent ass clowns.
The accountability of who you put in your office is, the same thing with Trump firing all those people, and even the people that worked in the Obama White House with Hillary as Secretary of State. If you appoint these people, you're responsible for them. It's
true.
To the grandest extent of,
even though
if you're the boss of a company, you're responsible for your people.
Yep.
So yes, but it's very interesting to see him, the grieving process he goes through and the guilt he probably feels from that. And I think the coolest part of that book, and regardless of what you believe, 9/11 or not, conspiracies, we're not going to talk about that today. He's talking about when he was at Ground Zero and he had the megaphone, the famous "I can hear you," and when he went to Yankee Stadium to throw the first pitch for baseball, in his autobiography, him talking about that, kind of gives you the chills a little bit.
Yeah,
sure.
They say if you ever want a good read, this is free advertisement. I'm not being paid to promote Decision Points, but
I've heard it's a
good read. So.
Pretty candid and forthcoming.
Look into it.
Yeah, but the collusion aspect of it all,
ridiculous.
Like I said, I think our hands in America are far from clean from accusing other countries of, being a part of our election process. I mean, at the end of the day, unless they rigged the voting machines, they really just influenced American people.
Right.
So, Assange, the WikiLeaks, all that stuff, you got to look deeper into what they're saying. So,
right.
On both sides.
Well, if it's truth that's influencing people, then what's the issue?
Yeah, what Hillary was accused of, or not accused of, but of the information that came out, the Russia colluded to show facts of what this person did. Why is the person that used that to their advantage getting in trouble?
The bad person.
Because he won?
Yep.
Yeah.
That the only reason why she's off the hook for everything that her and the DNC did.
Right.
In her camp,
they tried to frame it in a way that it was illegal and terrible that this information got out, and whoever used it was committing a crime, so to speak.
And then,
well, they didn't care what whistleblowers then, so
and the Steele dossier is another huge one. It was paid for by the Clinton campaign and made a lot of unverified claims, and it was used by James Comey and a few other FBI agents to get a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign.
Right.
And that doesn't get mentioned by anybody on the left.
Well, yeah, and even Comey admitted like they hoped for all of that to work out, and then they act like it just happened recently, where I swear Trump like said something about Comey admitting to something involving all of that, and then they called Trump a liar.
It was the Comey leaking stuff, and
that's what it was.
They're saying he accused them of leaking stuff, and it's a lie. And then Comey's like 2 days later, CNN posted the same article where Comey was hoping the leaked information he gave, like such a double standard with the media. And
well, all of that was from CNN. CNN posted this back in like 2017 or whatever it was, and then posted this in 2020. And it's just a complete contradiction to itself. The hypocrisy. It's incredible.
One of my favorite things to see when I'm not, shit posting and dropping dank memes is those compare and contrast the different articles, like what Vox said in 2016 versus 2019. Versus like what CNN said in 2016 and 2019, and how they changed their tune when it comes to mass surveillance, war, like various things. You know what I mean?
Only care about it if their guy's the one doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the hypocrisy of the media, like we're saying here, where they'll post one thing and say another. Like, look at the whole orange face thing. Where if, let's say, remember in the 2016 election when Hillary Clinton was, pretty much dying of pneumonia?
Yeah.
And everyone was like, you can't make fun of her for looking sick, for this or that. Like, you can't, or, say, like, any of the Democratic candidates were attacked because of appearance. And how, especially if it was a woman, how outraged the liberals and the liberal media and the progressives would be for making fun of someone's appearance. And then you have Trump with a bad spray tan, and it's freaking.
And they run it. They air reports on maybe his heart rate or his, weight from after his appointment with that one weird doctor. They'll give that all the airtime they want. But when Hillary fucking faints, in broad daylight, when it's not even that hot outside and she's surrounded by a bunch of people,
her there, like,
it's crazy.
That's the biggest thing, and I get it. And every time I complain to you guys about it, and Richter always says, the points out that it's going to happen, and that just hypocrisy from the left, where they can do all these things and they get away with it, and their base turns a blind eye and puts the blinders on, and
the big thing.
Then the Republicans do something a fraction of that, and oh my God, it's the end of the world. There's the Constitution's in trouble. Like,
so much fear mongering and propaganda over things that won't even really affect us that much, like the net neutrality, the ending of it.
Yeah,
nothing has changed.
Everything.
They made it sound like it was going to be the apocalypse.
Well, that's why I didn't believe like the coronavirus thing was too serious at first. Now I'm changing my tune on it, but like at first I'm like, this is just another Ebola. Like, this is just another, bird flu. This is just another, there's a list of every year something big comes out.
Yeah.
We have to worry about. There's mass panic, mass epidemic. And whenever something like this happens, or even like the impeachment, stuff like that, the first thing I always ask is, okay, what's happening that's being covered up?
Right.
What do they want us to be mad about so we don't look over here?
What's the distraction?
Exactly.
It's like that meme with the guy walking with his girlfriend going like this,
Yeah.
Like,
distracted boyfriend meme.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't know what to think of this whole outbreak, and then Richter makes it seem like this is more of a coordinated thing, something that isn't just some freak accident. It's more of a produced bioweapon.
Well, there's like the ground zero thing is very interesting in the umbrella logos. But I think I saw on Twitter yesterday the Chinese government's like welding.
They are welding apartment complex doors shut for individuals that have the coronavirus.
Are you serious?
Yeah, there's video of it, and anybody who posts video of that shit, they have to keep in mind they're in a totalitarian state, and if they get caught leaking, reporting, doing anything, any sort of journalism on it,
oh my God,
they're gone. They just disappear. They're risking everything.
Facial recognition is huge in China.
Mm-hmm.
I heard, I was reading something about it where, even like the protesters in Hong Kong with the American flags had the bandana and sunglasses, and they're still getting facial recognition pulled on them.
We talked about that on the podcast.
Okay, that's what I heard. But yeah, so that's how crazy it is.
It's serious.
You're right. Like, it's there's the digital footprint that you're posting this video. You're probably look at the doctor that like confirmed the first case. Just died of it. Like, I mean, he was arrested for it. Here in America, you can have a whistleblower, come on and lie about what the president's, not be 100% factual, not testify.
And they still get a lot of support just because it's anti-Trump.
But you can do that here in America, but in a country, if you discover it, you're jailed.
Mm-hmm.
You release that, you're
done.
Yeah.
It's the end of you.
That's why when, the media says that Trump is, or liberals and leftists in general, say that Trump is a dictator, he's the enemy of the free press, he wants to end all journalism. Well, journalists are free to make factually incorrect claims without recanting, and they get propped up because it's anti-Trump, and Trump doesn't respond with litigation or legal claims.
Right.
Whereas if you pulled that shit in China or Saudi Arabia or Iran, especially China, where they're effective at cracking down on journalists and reporters and getting everything under wraps when it comes to their state-sanctioned official narrative.
Yep.
You go to jail and you get killed. Here, you're free to criticize.
In Russia, you can't beat Vladimir Putin in a hockey game without, the threat of death. So
yeah. That's another thing is journalism in Russia and journalists getting persecuted.
Like everyone claims that, there's so many attacks on the First Amendment, and, I always hear people say, well, the Second Amendment was written with muskets. Okay, well, then the First Amendment is only applicable to printing presses.
Yep.
If that's the logic you want to use.
Yep.
Like,
sure.
It's everyone wants their cake and eat it too, and it's not just the left, because you got to remember like Obama's presidency.
Plenty of snowflakes on the right.
Yeah, exactly. And even to this day, like the Trump defenders, like I know Mitch, you always bring up his attacks on the Second Amendment with like bump stocks and stuff like that, and it's not the best example of a Republican president to do that. But the right defends him too, and that's the problem where I lie with Trump supporters is that I don't care who you like as the president, you have to be able to say they did good or they did bad. My favorite president, as I was kind of saying, George W. Bush, but to this day, I've probably said it more than anything else that he put 2 wars on our credit card essentially. Whether he was responsible for that or not, like I said, it all comes down to him being responsible. The presidents make mistakes. It's duly elected.
But the question is it a calculated mistake? Kind of pushed by special interests for the war contractors, defense contractors, and everything. And what are your principles? If you're a conservative, then you realize that Trump is really just a big spending liberal. I mean, if you go by his spending record, some of the things he said, and especially on gun rights, where the NRA hasn't fought him too hard, but Gun Owners of America has, because the NRA is just a pro-Republican group and not a pro-gun group.
Pro-white person group. They are. I mean, well, where's all these cases of African American people defending themselves with firearms, and you never hear him say anything about that. Well,
they could
never defend that. It's always when Tom Johnson down the street shoots someone for breaking into his house in a non-castle law state, then the NRA comes to play.
Yeah, definitely. And well, the drug war has disproportionately affected minorities. That's the one thing all of us can point to where they've just been so fucked over. And in many states, in the vast majority of states, even if you're a nonviolent felon, you can't own a firearm once you get out. Even if you're a nonviolent drug offending felon. And the NRA never comes to their defense. They never say, you sold drugs, but you didn't infringe on anybody's rights, really. You didn't harm anybody, commit violent acts. We're going to stand up for your right to carry and conceal or own a firearm. The NRA is never there.
No, never. And that's, the NRA does have, does some good things. It's not, they do a lot of bad things too. Yeah. It's not a perfect organization. It's very corrupt, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't go to them to be the first supporters of the Second Amendment rights, because it's only if it fits their members, profile, they support First Amendment rights.
You get a lot of money from law enforcement too.
Right. Old white Republicans.
Right. Yeah. You see when you get people that have been around for a while, they're stuck in their ideology, and that just kind of becomes part of that organization as long as they're still in the seats.
So, and I think America's proven that you don't need organizations to protect your gun rights. Look at Virginia. I'm sure the NRA is definitely down there.
22,000.
Press off it, but at the end of the day, there's certain rights and certain things that we as Americans have.
Just comes down to individials.
Exactly, and it comes down to the people who are going to fight for it. That's why, with Trump being kind of anti-Second Amendment, that's one of the things I want to look past when I say I'm going to vote for him, because I know that regardless of who's sitting in that chair, whatever party they are,
They're going to push
You'll
the
never
same
get
shit.
the guns away from America.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that's one thing that there's going to be a lot of blood.
Oh yeah,
especially with
over
red flag laws being proposed. But the thing about the bump stock ban is, if you have a big plastic whatever bump stock, that's great. But if he bends it, it's not a big deal because you can just use a belt loop or a rubber band to use as a bump stock. And it works just as effectively. It has nearly the same semi-automatic firearm when the rubber band is used as a bump stock will have nearly the same rate of fire as a machine gun.
Yeah.
It's like, what did you really do? You didn't stop any.
No, but it's still not good press for a party that claims to be pro-gun right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For sure. That's why the Gun Owners of America, GOA filed a lawsuit right away when Trump unilaterally imposed his bump stock ban, while the NRA was kind of twiddling their thumbs and they were meeting with Pence and Trump.
Because it needed support.
Yeah.
I mean, but here's the thing too that you got to realize is that I don't agree with. And when you look at liberals and progressives as a whole, and the conservatives as a whole, is I think the mindset of thinking is, well, he didn't ban guns, he banned bump stock, so it's not really that. I'd rather have that than Hillary Clinton in office. It's looking at it from too macro a view where you can criticize your leaders on different opinions. There's some things that I really like about Trump, and there's some things I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I can criticize the same thing with any other president. You can criticize him here and still not want the opposing party in office or the opposing candidate in office. And you can support here to help support not having the other person in office. But I think everyone's taking a look at it as one giant chunk. And, well, I support him, but not all his policies. But it's okay because it's better than a Democrat.
Well, they're like one-issue voters then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a majority of America, I feel.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's true. There's just one thing we care about, and that's what we get into politics for, is that one thing.
When you vote, in the presidential election, you go through the sheet and the punches, and there's all the local offices, and people don't look into stuff around there, and unless it directly impacts you. You're going to vote for your local representatives, like your Duluth City Council. Like, do you look into them, Ryan? Like, when you're voting? I imagine you might, but do you think the average everyday Joe looks into the people they're voting to city council?
No, because I will be honest, I really don't. As much as I want to get involved, I've been saying I want to get involved, it's much harder to, because I don't think it's as big of a deal. So there really isn't free-flowing information. You really got to go dig it up or go to the events themselves. You can't gather anything from the news, because, do we attend anything when it comes to the federal level of politics? No, it just all comes through, it all comes through the media for a majority of it.
Well, and the thing with talking about small or single issue voters is that's essentially what small local politics is these city council people and even mayors to an extent, and smaller towns. I mean, the grand scheme of things, Duluth's not that big a town in this country. So you're looking at people running for local office, which is very important. Like, you could argue that your local offices, small local offices, are almost more important than the federal offices in your everyday life.
Well, absolutely.
And it's the single issue voters is what get these people elected, because those are the ones that turn out and definitely vote for that person instead of just 50-50ing it.
Yep. And we see how just the homelessness is becoming a big influencer in policy and who people are voting for. Just that issue alone is causing people to get seats and recognition.
Should be illegal to be homeless.
Yeah, that would solve it, wouldn't it?
I mean, that's such a non-libertarian view, like putting someone in jail because they have a mental health or because they can't afford a place to live and because they're just minding their own business, because you're going after the violent ones and the innocent ones that are harmless are getting affected. But I mean, it's not good look for the city. I mean, you have something like a Super Bowl in town or a Final Four, or even stuff up in Duluth Grandma's Marathon where people are coming from all around the country and you're seeing all these homeless people begging and
handling,
and it just kind of loses the appeal and kind of hurts your city's image and impacts you economically from bringing in big events. Like, as far as like hotels go, like they live and die on big events coming in. I know that for Grandma's Marathon up here, the hotels in Duluth have a 2-night minimum stay that's all prepaid and non-cancelable.
Yeah.
So big events like that, if you ever gets pulled because one person gets injured, or so one violent homeless person attacks someone or does something
goes
and you pull that, that's a lot of revenue, and it trickles down. It's not just hotels, it's restaurants, it's local retail shops, it's everything. It's impacted by it. But what do? You can't just throw someone in jail for having a mental health issue or being addicted to heroin. Like,
Yeah.
So what do you do? And you think the government fixed them? And I mean, we kind of talked about this on the podcast that didn't work out. Where you can give them some social support, some support mechanism through the state and through the the county, the city governments. But what's happening is that it's being expanded to you're giving them way too much, and you're making it such a lifestyle that they don't want to leave it.
Yeah.
Yep. You're making them very complacent, and they're not feeling uncomfortable in their poverty. And Ryan's point about politicians getting seats off just the big gargantuan issue and everything encompassed within it, the issue of homelessness, with the homeless bill of rights that they wanted to pass here in Duluth.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a massive expansion of the welfare state on top of what we already have in Minnesota.
Well, you're just pandering to people by, you just say, I'm going to make your life easier, vote for me. And that's it. Like, why wouldn't I vote for that person? They're going to make my life easier.
Mm-hmm. And everybody thinks that the taxes from like the incredibly rich people are gonna pay for all this, and that's just not 100% true. Or if you've seen the statistics, if you took every millionaire and taxed them 100%, you'd be able to run the federal government spending for like 2/3 of a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but let's say Duluth with the homelessness issue, where it's not just the people that have the mansions around here that are impacted. It's the everyday modest people. I make a modest income. You make a modest income. You can have a nice house here, nice neighborhood, nice car, everything. But I mean, it's not like you're sitting around with $100,000 sitting in your bank account or $500,000. It's not like you have like an exuberant like slush fund that when you're getting taxed on this, that's hurting you.
Yep.
To help someone who doesn't necessarily is able to help themselves or willing to help themselves. So why are you being punished for that?
Well, right. And it's not that I'm unwilling to help somebody. It's just when I see what my tax rate is already between what I pay when I go to purchase something, I'm taxed at least 10% here. I get over 30% taken out of my paycheck. So if I'm having like 50% of my money go into just taxes, why do I have to keep giving up more? Can we move some of this money around in some way? Like when taxes go up, could I get a receipt for that? Yeah. Like, could we have some sort of accountability, or could I know why or what's going on? I mean, you'd have to be more involved, I think, to get all those answers. But I think there's just so much that we pay for, and we have no idea where the money's even going.
I saw this like years ago on someone posted on Facebook or something, but it's where if every American citizen had to actually sit down and write out a check to pay their taxes that is having deducted, it'd be a whole different story.
Oh yeah,
right.
I mean, I think got a third of my paycheck stolen from me, and I get like $2,000 back, which that's not fair.
They want you to be as detached from your taxpayer dollars as possible, because they realize that once you start looking into what the Met Council, what City Council, every government official on the federal, state, local level is doing with the money that they took from you,
right,
it's not going to be a pretty picture, because there's so much welfare fraud, abuse.
Oh yeah,
in general, just on regarding welfare, and again, what Gary was saying is you're hurting the person you're taxing. On top of that, if you're giving it to homeless individuals who don't want to work for it, and there are many homeless individuals who do want to get a place, so they can have a dress, whatever, and then get hired, kind of get on the feet a little bit. And there are many volunteerist projects that facilitate that or catalyze that. But when you're hurting somebody by taxing them, and then on top of that, you're giving that money to individuals who don't spend that money wisely, don't spend their time wisely. You just prop up failure. You subsidize their failures,
right?
And they continue down that path with no change. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is change. Help convince them to change their ways.
So it doesn't matter what they end up doing; they still have something coming in.
Yes.
Whereas when you fail and nothing's coming in, it motivates you to do something differently. Like especially in business, if you're not making any money, there's something wrong with what you're doing. You got to switch up your process, change this, change that, change what you're sourcing, all sorts of shit. But
evaluate your product.
There's so many things you'd look into, but if it's just here you go, here's the money, regardless of what you do.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think you're changing anything. You're just you're furthering the issue, because you're just allowing it to happen at that point.
Yep.
Because how is anything going to change? People are going to become comfortable. They get used to that sort of system. We see that today.
Businesses are losing money too. With I don't know if I already said it here, but 99% of homeless people, I'm guessing, are violent or not violent. They're innocent. They're safe. Not going to hurt you. Just going to kind of bug you a little bit and maybe, make you feel uncomfortable. But, there's some violent people out there with these issues, with homelessness, that just keeps driving them further into, their mental, voids where they're at. And
Right.
if someone, you own a retail store, fast food place down by Canal Park, and someone gets stabbed out on there. With the age of social media, all those Yelp reviews, all the, TripAdvisor, everything, it's going to get posted on it. Don't go buy your sandwiches from here because you might get stabbed. And,
Right.
then those businesses are losing money. And, some things is a grand scale of you're losing, a couple $1,000s, which you can, make up at a different time. But some companies are, you can lose up to $100,000 and stuff. I've heard stories of that in Minneapolis where people are losing, stuff because the violence outside the hotel. People don't want to, go there.
Yep. It's all of a sudden a bad area of town. Why do I want to stay over there?
Yeah, companies are leaving.
Area.
There's a certain negative externality that comes with homelessness, just how small of the population.
And they, other states will send them up here on the bus lines, just because our welfare program's, easier for them to take advantage of.
Yep.
And there'll be people, drug addicts and, people who mental health, like I said before, they just, we don't want to support you here. Go to Minneapolis, go to St. Paul. Like,
there's so many open jobs.
St. Paul's,
we were saying before.
Like the Dorothy Day Center in St. Paul just got rebuilt, and they put how much, hundreds of thousands of dollars into a brand new building there. And it's like a $40 a night rent or something like that. But, people there, there's violent people there. I've heard tons of stories from there.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how far can we push this line? There's going to be a breaking point, I feel like, as far as how many people can be in the welfare system versus the people providing for that system. At least with me, it's like I'm only going to be willing to go so far with how much of my money is going to be taken to support people that don't contribute to the system whatsoever. Because I'm all fine with like helping people. Like I said before, I'm willing to help people, but I'm not willing to give up so much of my money to put into the system to benefit people when you're going to end up with more leeches than hosts.
You racist white privileged Ryan.
I know, right? It's terrible, but it's just a fact because it's human nature, right? I mean, people are going to be gravitating towards that because it's easy. People want to take the easy way out. We try to simplify things as much as we can. And if there's a system where all I got to do is go sign a few documents, I have to go put in an application twice a year, and I keep my income flowing to me, and that's all it takes to keep my income. And I get to, get food stamps. I can go out and buy all these groceries. I can buy lottery tickets and cigarettes and booze still. I mean, I see that. I worked at a gas station for a while, and that was my biggest eye-opener into just poverty and seeing how people behave on a day-to-day basis. And I would see people coming in time and time again and how much money they were dropping. I'm just like, I'd have to do separate transactions for EBT. And then after they would buy all their energy drinks and candy and chips, then they're moving on to buying their cigarettes and lottery tickets. And I'm just like, if you have money to spare for cigarettes and lottery tickets, like, couldn't you put that money towards your life and taking care of your children that you have with you and all that other shit?
The more children you have, the more money you get back from old Uncle Sam.
I had a guy that came in and he had, this has to be illegal, he had 4 or 5 EBT cards in his wallet, and each one of them had like the PIN written on there, and he was trying to remember like what had what amount on it, and he had to be like 50, 60 years old, and it's probably because he had a kid, and each one was for one of his kids. Yep. It became like a system, like the whole, he's probably has kids in their 30s, 40s, they get to go and claim. So then all of a sudden between this family, they have say thousands of dollars a month coming in between each one of them, and they can just pool it together, and there you go. They just live off the system.
With the theft returns, there's places that, fast food joints that will shut down because all their employees quit because they think, oh, I just got, $8,000 handed to me. I don't need to work.
Yeah, right.
And they'll like, I've seen people post signs saying like, this tax refund will only last you like 2 months. Like, don't quit your job because,
There was a study a while back.
I remember.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was Pew Research or not, or somebody with Reason Magazine. It showed that in 35 of 50 states, being on welfare pays better than, I think, a $15 minimum wage.
Yeah.
I believe that.
When you combine all the benefits that you can possibly get.
Your benefits can equal, like, I saw that, like a $14 an hour job.
But you also have to think, too, the people on welfare aren't exactly the most fiscally responsible. So let's say you go to the doctor for something and you get a bill and you just let it go to collections and you say, okay, after 8 years it'll just fall off. Like you can call me all you want, you can send me letters all you want.
Yep.
But after if I keep switching jobs, you're never gonna be able to, take it whatever it's called when they take it out of your check. I can't think of it.
Garnish it.
Yeah, garnish my wages.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you move jobs every so many years or something like that, like that's fine. Like go to collections. You're never gonna get that. You know?
Yep. I'll hop jobs every month or so. Once you come to find me, I'll just move.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you are making that money, but you're also going to have less expenses because, I mean, I'm not saying everyone on welfare does that.
No.
I guess I kind of sounded like that was kind of a general broad rationalization, but I didn't mean it that way. But I'm sure there's definitely people out there that happen.
There's many ways that you can abuse the system and find your way to ride it. Some people ride it in that fashion. Other people ride it in other ways that we could dive into. But it's just ultimately I think the issue is just providing that service to people, a way that you can just live without having to do much. And I think the whole reason we have what we have today is through people working hard, and it's not that anything was really stolen from anybody. I mean, I don't know. Then I think we could start diving into the whole slavery thing.
Yeah.
Like, how do we have what we have today? But I just don't think that there's much that we can do when we get into that subject. But as far as changing people's behavior, because that's what the issue is people are acting a certain way, and how do you influence that?
If they don't want to change.
Well, yeah, you can't do it through legislation.
No.
I wrote something on a sheet of paper. Yeah, now you're going to be different.
And socialism is not even people will say, if I had a more fair, starting point, if I was equal with everyone else, like a socialist regime promises, even though it can't deliver that, things would be a lot better. But that's not true, and that's proven.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Venezuela.
Equality of outcomes, equality of opportunity. But going back to the fiscal responsibility aspect of the poor, there was that show a while back. I can't remember if it was on Showtime or what, but they gave a homeless person $100 fucking grand.
Yeah.
And I think it was within a month and a half, pissed it all away. It all away. And
I mean that you
can't legislate. You can't solve that problem through legislation or bureaucracy. You solve that problem by educating that person on, finance and personal responsibility.
They don't know how to budget whatsoever.
If you don't know how to budget, you're fucked.
There's stories like you posted on Facebook a while ago, Mitch, where if you gave Elon Musk $1 million and you gave a homeless person $1 million, the results would end up the same.
Yeah, who would have more money after
a year,
a year or two?
Obviously, there's going to be, it's not cut and dry 50-50 that one side's going to be this, one side's. I think it'd be more like 25% of people would just be as broke, and another 15% of people could arguably be as successful as Elon Musk. But there's some people like me, for example, like when I started my career, I was making 14, 15 hours as a supervisor, $35 grand a year as a a front office manager, and like it's really hard to pay bills without taking a second job. You can't take a second job with this career with the hours you work. So it's really hard trying to float on X amount of money in the place I was living. If I lived up here, lived in Bemidji, so I could probably do that just fine. And now I'm making better money, and it's easier for me to pay stuff up. But it's playing the game of catch up, and that's why I think if you did give some people, some people aren't very smart. I was not responsible fiscally. When I was younger, that's not
a lot of us.
I'm not going to lie to you guys,
Yeah.
I played the credit card game and lost when I was 18, and I learned my lessons. But that's the thing that I take away from that is all the dumb things I did when I was younger, when I was 18, 19, 23, 24. I learned from my mistakes.
You learn from it. Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, there's still every now and then you get kicked when you're down, but for the most part, you're still learning every day. You learn from your mistakes and you move forward how to be more fiscally conservative. And I live on a budget now. Like.
Yeah.
I get, about $100 a paycheck, if that, for slush money if I want to go out to eat one day or if I want to go buy something.
Yeah.
It's people don't, and I never really learned to budget until I was 25 years old, 26 years old. And does that fall in the American school system? Does that fall on parenting? Does that fall on personal accountability?
All those factors.
Maybe a little of everything.
All of it. Yeah.
Income inequality is seen as a bad thing nowadays, which is stupid.
For me, it's been the biggest motivator.
Yeah, absolutely. The harder you work, the more you bust your ass, the better your chances of success are.
Well, yeah,
when the left and socialists and communists, and we don't need to name names, obviously, we all know who, when they talk about, they graduate with this debt, then they want to hire minimum wage because they can't get a job in the field in which they're supposed to specialize with their degree. And then they just cry out and protest, and it gets further and further away from personal responsibility, and then they bitch about income inequality.
Yeah.
Well, income inequality is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's great.
You have to have it. And there's going to be the bottom of the food chain, top of the food chain. Well, one thing, too, that's even a problem now with college degrees is whether it's relevant or not. Gender studies, obviously, you're not going to find a career in. But there's
what? No.
Well, yeah, exactly. There's realistic jobs out there that you. So I graduated with a public health degree. That's not a silly degree. That's not gender studies. That's not Arabic languages. It's honest work, and for me to find a job in that field, you need experience. Well, I didn't have time to volunteer in college because I had to work to pay for things.
Right.
And there's no job in that field in college really that would pay what I was making at my hotel job in college. So I had volunteer hours at my internship, but when you go to a job interview with Wright County, and I had an interview with them, and I called them back, and I thought I did really well. I came super prepared, bought a suit for it, and I called them follow up with this. Just following up my interview and my application. Oh, we hired some. Okay. And I was taught, always ask, is there anything I could have improved on in my interview? And she says, no. I'm like, okay. Can you elaborate? She goes, your interview was great. You were our favorite candidate. You just didn't have enough experience. And I had over a year of experience in, volunteering. So that's one problem with, this stuff that even if you get a realistic degree, you're still going to have to find another industry to work in because you can't get into what your degree's in.
Yep. Yeah. I ran into a similar thing when I tried to get a job when I was in between my pizza gigs. This is years ago, though. I was maybe 20 at the time, and the job it was kind of the same thing. They said that I was a good interview, all of that. They wanted to go for me, but I didn't have the background of this guy who was 40 years old and had 15 years experience in this field. Like, I literally had no experience in what I was applying for. Something with like mixing paint, doing something with like chemicals. Literally no experience, but they were going to train me. I just had no background. And
even if you like explain it in an interview, like when I had that interview with Wright County, I was saying, well, here's an advantage. Some of the advantages I have is I've never, the inexperience I do have, I try to turn as advantage of saying, I'm sure you have other people come in from other counties and other departments that have bad habits with them.
You don't have to break
anything. You
anything.
have a fresh start. You can mold me into what the ideal thing is.
Yes. Show me what you want and I will
do
that.
They love that. They ate that up. And then I'm like, another thing is, I have my background experience might not be in public health. Exactly. It's in customer service. But in this industry, you have to be able to communicate with people and have to do it. And like they ate everything I set up. And the only reason was you didn't have as much experience as the other person.
Right. You couldn't put 5 years at here.
Yeah. And no, I'm not sitting here saying like, let's abolish debt or anything because I picked a degree that I couldn't get a job in. But I mean, I just think that there's a stigma when people have the conversation. Oh, you have a dance degree. Like, no, there's other people out there that can't find jobs in a realistic degree either. So, yeah, but that goes back to the job, the job market. Why are you putting all these people out there with degrees that there's no jobs for?
Well, right. I mean, we can only have so many people in certain positions. So you're going to get a degree and you might not get the first position you go for. It might take you a few tries before you get in finally, but it makes it that much harder when there's X number of applicants and only X number of positions.
And like another thing too, like with the motivation to make more money in whatever career you're in. I mean, there's still an age gap in the job world out there between, your upper senior managers are people who believe you should have the same job for 20 years.
Yeah.
It's like in my industry, when you go from I was a front desk supervisor for 6 months, front office manager for a year, AGM for a year. And, everywhere I went, they said, man, you moved job slot. I'm like, taking like a 10 grand raise every stop I go. Like if you got offered that, would you, no one ever answered the question. Or if you got offered a chance to take a step up to the next position in your career and take a significant raise, would you do it?
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. And there's so many people stuck in the ways of, oh, you're a job. Now, if you have 5 jobs in 5 months, okay, that's one thing. But like if people don't look at resumes and see growth on there, where you went from a supervisor to a manager to an assistant general manager to this, and you're a job hopper is what I hear.
You can see that you're climbing a ladder, not just jumping from system to system. You're learning one system.
But you'd be surprised how negative people take that.
That's surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, big time. That's almost every job interview I've had is, man, you've had a lot of jobs. And it's like, well, each one, there's never been a lateral move on there.
Yeah.
And it's just, how do you explain it? And you say, I did everything for career growth. And then I guess people are thinking, well, oh, you're just going to leave me after a year for something bigger. And that's, if you get an employee for a year, that's a success now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it is. Well, then what they should do then is provide the opportunity for you to climb their ladder then and move up.
The problem with good jobs is people don't leave either. So like, if you're at a good hotel, for example, and you have the same management, like my current hotel, I'm the least senior manager with 1.5 years experience, and everyone likes their job, everyone likes working there. They treat us right, they pay us good, and there's not exactly career growth, and you have to go to another place or. This is specific to hotels, I guess, where a lot of companies in Minnesota that manage hotels, they only have 1 or 2 in the state. So it's kind of hard to, in this particular field, to grow with the company. You can do it.
Yeah.
But most times your advancement's going to be from going to another hotel.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just unique to this career. But I mean, like I said, it's just kind of unfortunate that, you're punished for. I went from being a supervisor to an assistant general manager in less than 1.5 years, and I'm being punished for, being good at my job, essentially, for wanting to grow.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and it does depend on how good is the job ultimately. I mean, that could make you want to jump to a new position at a new company because you find that this company does something better.
Yeah,
and I went through that experience kind of with PJs where I was totally comfortable. I didn't think I was ever going to leave. Honestly, because I knew it inside and out. I knew what to expect. I knew how to handle all the day-to-day stuff, deal with customers. I was pretty comfortable with the whole thing. I thought it was a good gig. And then it didn't take much for the whole thing to go south real fucking quick. But
Mitch, you've been at the same job for 9 years almost there, man? Like, what's your thought on, like, I don't think you'll ever leave there. You said before you moved to 70. Like,
it's a generational thing with the work ethic, too. Like you've talked about many times where, these applicants show up and then a few of them might seem promising and then they just work a shift or two and then they're done or they don't even show up. But that's the thing is with human services, they'll go through training and then they'll just quit, even though it's, as I've stated before, with the turnover rate, it's like gas stations. They have to keep increasing the pay. And even when they keep increasing the pay, it's, they still don't get enough
kept you at the same job for 9 years though? Like, and you probably had opportunities to move up and you said no.
Yeah, just the sense of comfort, and the OT pay isn't bad. You can get as many hours as you want, and I'm a fucking workhorse and an ox.
What would it take for you to leave there? Like, would it have to be like the perfect career job?
It would have to be it would have to be some super epic shit, or if I could get a job where I'm working under the table and not paying to the state.
Yeah,
to say the least.
That's on live podcast now, so if you
that's true.
If the IRS sees your
I don't want that knock on the door.
They know your intentions.
They see your you're then money and you make a lot less, they're gonna.
But the important part is a major government agency is watching this podcast. Basement. Excellent.
That's how you know you made it.
That's a great start.
Yeah. Well then, you haven't climbed the ladder though.
No.
Like, are you in the same position you were as
you've told me you won't want to? Is it because you lose your OT pay?
Possibly, but I just like working with like developmentally disabled individuals and like physically disabled individuals, and it's very fulfilling to me. Just these individuals who I would say the vast majority of society has kind of forgotten about, and I get to be there and help them with personal cares, finances, and some other stuff too.
So that brings me back to one of our previous conversations. I was going to ask you, because you're in this field, the people you work with and Second Amendment rights. How do you feel about people that you
mental illness and firearm ownership?
What's your opinion on that?
Of course, none of us want severely mentally ill individuals with firearms, but the question becomes who gets to determine who is mentally ill, which mental illnesses would deter firearm ownership.
Sure.
And that's a slippery slope.
But it's your Second Amendment right as a citizen.
Exactly. And well, that's where, again, we have to go back to the numbers when it comes to gun crime and like firearm-related homicides and everything within the populace and within the populace that is mentally ill. But most of the time, the vast majority of mentally ill individuals are not violent. In fact, most of them are petrified of guns.
Yeah.
Like they're fucking scared of guns.
So in your opinion, who decides if they're fit to...
Exactly. Not the state.
Yeah, not the
but
state.
I mean, private homeowners, if there was a supported living site, they could set the rules. They could say,
no guns on the premises.
Exactly. Yeah. And then problem solved. Make it a private property issue, and that would solve most of the problem, I think.
But that doesn't. So if a place has that sign on there, unless it's like a government building, you can still legally conceal and carry. On that.
I believe so.
No gun, you can.
Yeah.
So you're a worker there, and I'm sure you deal with people who are mentally unstable, and you never know. Do you feel like you should, or someone you've said before? What if someone breaks in the middle of the night?
Overnight staff definitely should. They should be able to carry it in a biometrically coded portable safe, so they can just, either their handprint or like a few numbers, digits, whatever, and then be able to get a firearm. If somebody were to break in, especially in a home where the individuals are older, they're weaker, and they're non-ambulatory, it would help to be able to defend them because they can't defend themselves. But yeah, it's if you don't have a violent criminal record and your address on your license matches your application, then you can go home same day with a firearm. But so far,
if you have your permit to carry.
Permit to carry?
Like for a handgun, if for a shotgun it's different, or a rifle it's different, or a non-semi-automatic rifle it's different. Well, it's even like anything AR-15 related, like assault weapon.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's some form of waiting period.
Semi-automatic and a 30-round banana clip on the same day and walk out of there just fine.
Yep.
But if for a handgun, if you don't have your permit to carry, then you have to go through a 10-day. You have to pass a background check. You go through a 10-day wait period to purchase a handgun. And you still do have to pass a background check every time you buy a firearm. So I volunteer for outdoor conservation organization, and at a lot of our events we do raffles for guns. And I guess there's an individual a couple years ago who won a shotgun, and he went to go pick it up from the store, and he couldn't pass his background check, so he couldn't get it. So that's just a shotgun, one of the easiest guns to buy out there. And, and granted, it'll do some damage if you want to take it to someone, but at the end of the day,
even after the waiting period and the background check and everything, most mentally unstable or ill individuals that are considered mentally unstable or ill will be able to obtain a firearm. They could just get an Uber, Lyft, get some transportation to Cabela's or Mills Fleet Farm or somewhere, wherever they have a gun library, but they don't. And I think that is a testament to how much they want to stay away from firearms in general. Because they see it all the time. They watch movies with guns and they don't really think anything of it.
And that's a lot of people who they support the Second Amendment rights, but they're not diehard gun owners. Is I don't care if you have a gun, but I'm not going to have one. That's why people always say, and I've said it before, if you want to bring Switzerland's, and granted, the thing that people don't know about Switzerland is you're required to have a gun in your house, but you're not allowed to have ammo in your house, so it's kind of counterpoint. But
it's pretty stupid. And if a violent criminal wanted to take guns or bring guns or ammo into their house or out of their house, a piece of paper isn't going to do it, so the gun law itself is pointless. Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. People say, well, I don't necessarily think that's the answer, just because of the population number in America, and it's pretty divided, and I don't think that you should force someone to own a gun if they don't want to, but that's the thing. People
shouldn't take away the right.
And the gun safety thing is one of the biggest aspects I think is overlooked. I mean, I took hunter safety as a 21-year-old, and I'd go do my field test with a bunch of little 10-year-olds.
That's when I took it.
But it was really interesting, the way you learn things, the basic rules, know what you're shooting at, don't have your finger on the trigger. I mean, I would be fine that if you were going to do something where you're forcing people to do stuff is force children to go through a gun safety class like that. And I'm not saying I believe in that, but I'm saying,
you could understand.
I like to meet in the middle on stuff where, if you have people like we were talking before with, student loans, where let's not cancel student loans. Let's meet in the middle and cancel, interest, blah, blah, blah. Like if you're going to do a meet in the middle, maybe do something like that where, make sure anyone who'll ever have to handle a firearm, knows how to. So my fiance doesn't like guns, which is fine. That's her own thing. And she lets me keep them in the house. But I was showing her on my deer rifle one time, I took the bolt out and I said, the only way this gun's going to kill someone now is if you beat them with it. Because it cannot physically fire a bullet without that bolt in there.
Inanimate object.
Yeah. And that's the thing people don't understand is that, it's the guns aren't dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, they are. That's not the right way.
There are many other ways
to the potential to be, but it's more in the hands of. It's not just
gonna go off sitting in my closet downstairs.
Right. It's in the hands of an ignorant person or a deranged person where it's going to become dangerous.
In college, we had loaded guns in our apartment, and where are they loaded? So you don't give a kid a toy without batteries, right.
Sure.
And I told my roommate one time, I said, you don't even have the balls to shoot someone if they broke in. And he goes, you're right, but if you break into a house and you hear, you're getting the heck out of there pretty quick.
Yep.
Switzerland has the best gun culture when it comes to safety, of responsibility, and awareness. And here in America, the left and certainly on the right in a few cases, they believe that certain measures or certain gun control measures will prevent shootings, and it won't, because the 3D printing of guns is going to get refined, pioneered, even better than it is now.
One thing I learned about that, like you can print your own AR-15. I guess it's incredibly expensive. Like it's more expensive.
Well, yeah, once you get the 3D, once you get the 3D printer,
but even the material that you have to use for it, I guess, is very expensive. So I'm not saying that's
possible. It
will go lower once the 3D printing game, which I kind of think has kind of hit a pause button recently, but that's another subject for another day. Once that gets bigger and everyone has a 3D printer, yeah, the cost can go down. But like, I don't really like the argument that if you take guns away, people can 3D print them because they're going to find them regardless, and it's probably not going to be through 3D printing.
It's just going to be a black market.
Yeah, it's going to be like drugs.
There's ways to make a firearm out of just whatever.
Sure.
Piece something together. And
the only
get a
people
potato
that
gun
do
or
that
whatever.
to
Precisely
hurt
right.
someone are the people who were going to hurt someone regardless.
Yep.
Right.
And that's a great point because when somebody says we need mandatory psychological testing for firearms and stuff, and we want the state to be the ones doing the testing and everything. Well, do you do that for semi-truck drivers? Because the Nice truck attacker in France, and it was Bastille Day, he killed, 84 people and injured over 480. And all he did was jack a truck.
500 people or something.
The Boston Marathon bomber created those bombs with the pressure cooker, everything you could go buy at a local Kohl's.
Exactly. Should we ban pressure cookers?
Yeah. I mean, I remember
Should we have some programs and government committees to be able to regulate and have oversight over
look at England
purchase of pressure cookers? Yeah.
England is a perfect example, like where you take guns away. Now people are throwing acid at other people and they're stabbing with knives, and you can go to Walmart and buy a $20 knife set and you can do just as much damage as look at Virginia Tech back in 2016.
You just had 2 pistols.
No, the stabbing, not the original shooting. In 2016, it was like right after Sandy Hook.
Okay.
Somebody killed 23 people with just like kitchen knives, right? But it didn't make the news because Sandy Hook was so much bigger.
Yeah.
Made a conspiracy.
Yeah, the Virginia Tech shooting. Yeah, the Virginia Tech shooting was crazy because it was an individual who just had, I believe, a few severe anxiety disorders. He had a few meetings with a psychiatrist or psychologist, and he just had 2 pistols, and he went around fucking killing people, and nobody shot back because nobody was carrying.
Going back to the conversation about the individuals like that you work with, like, so say it wasn't up for the state to necessarily decide, and you had to get a psychiatrist evaluation if you're even being considered,
sure,
for that. If you look at, I feel like if you look at most of the mass shootings that have occurred in America in the last 15 years, yeah, the numbers have increased, but there's a few of them, like the guy in Florida that kind of started off David Hog's career. Like he should never have been able to buy a gun.
Nicholas Cruz. Oh no,
there's a lot of people that before they shut up the place, said they would have passed these tests.
Yep.
They would have been legally like under
anyways.
very strict regulation already, and the new regulations people want to pass, they still would have gotten the ability to purchase a gun. And that's where I think with anything time you talk about mass shootings is if somebody wants to hurt someone, whether it be with a gun, a knife, their fist, a bomb, a semi, a car, if someone wants to hurt someone, you're not going to be able to protect everybody. And it sucks because it's really sad when stuff like that happens. And obviously you don't want stuff like that happening. But even if you try and protect everybody with laws and regulations and signing your name on a piece of paper, people are still going to get hurt. And that's just the human nature of things. And how do you prevent that? You can't.
No.
Right.
Nicholas Cruz, there were so many times where he would enter court and he should have been put on a no-sale list. I think any libertarian, anybody on any apolitical or political spectrum would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because he would like do target practice, and some of the rounds would go into his neighbor's yard. And I think in high school, didn't he get expelled from Parkman?
Something. Maybe, no, he was threatened to, but
okay, but
he brought a wooden sword.
Oh yeah, I mean, but he made very credible threats.
Yeah,
and he did a lot of.
See, and that's what I wonder. Like, what is the process? Because what are you going to do? You're going to sit down with somebody and just ask them questions, or what are going to be the red flags? Like, oh, they said no and they should have said yes.
That would lead to these generalized warrants.
Right. What I think is going to happen eventually is going to be if you even see it, like, eventually if the world keeps going the way it is, the progressive win. If you even see a therapist, you're probably going to get put on a no sale list. Yeah. I think it's going to get to because I've heard things before where if you get a support animal, emotional support animal, you're not allowed to purchase firearms. I mean, that's a bunch of hooey. I think that's just scare tactics from the right trying to scare people. But I could definitely see something like that occurring, 20 years, 10 years, even 3 years down the road where if you seek any mental counsel, you're not going to be allowed to buy a firearm, and that's going to defer people who need to seek mental counsel from doing so. So now you're just making the mental health issue even worse. Yep. And that's the thing. Look at red flag laws. Like, that if you want a guaranteed way for a shootout to happen, red flag law states. Like, look what happened in Maryland.
Yeah.
Between that cop and that guy. That, and the fact, to get put on the red flag list does not take a whole lot.
No.
So also, like I was saying, like the guy failed his background check at the store to get that shotgun. I found out something interesting. Say you and your wife got in a fight, right? And someone called the cops on you guys, and she left, and you didn't do anything. You guys were just in a screaming fight, but you got called on for domestic, disturbance. You will not pass a background check to buy a shotgun.
Really?
Yep. If it's at your house and you're the house owner, you can go get that cleared. You just have to call the FBI and say there was no police charges, nothing ever happened.
I'm sure that takes
they're
forever.
pretty lenient about it, I guess. But if you have a domestic disturbance called against your property, you can't buy a shotgun.
Wow.
And I mean, granted, I'm not sure if it happens all the time, but that is a good way to get your name on the list to fail the check to.
Wow. Then you have to go through the trouble clearing that up and all
kind
over
of
something
makes sense.
small.
You don't want domestic abusers to have firearms.
Just how do you know they're in?
Yeah. It's a product of big government going too far and
right.
Hurting the little guy.
So they stop you there, and then they have to further investigate, and then they determine if you're fit. Yeah.
It's red flag laws are interesting because that's essentially when, for a lot of people, the boogaloo is going to start because it's going to take knocking over a few dominoes to get to that point, but it's going to happen years down the road, like Gary was saying, where if you seek mental health counseling, and that negates your firearm ownership, there's a mandatory buyback, or you have to give up your guns just to seek mental health counseling, then, I mean, that's even more of a slippery slope. That's crazy.
I read an article where if the government wanted to take your guns, they could. I think they know what'll happen. But it's not going to be coming and knocking on your door and searching your house. It's going to be your debit card, your bank account's going to get frozen, your children are going to get taken away from you. You
can get canceled.
Yep, you're going to get... They can do it all without even stepping foot in your house.
Pretty much.
So, but that's what starts a civil war. So I think that, if it ever gets to that
far
point...
can you push people before they push back?
Well, that'd be the destabilization of society. Yeah, maybe there's some sort of interest that wants to see that happen.
Oh, I guarantee it, because you de-arm the populace, and now you really control them.
Yeah.
Yep. And you cancel them through their Patreons or PayPal and their accounts, and they have to kind of go underground, whatever. But it all comes down to how far can you push somebody before they start to push back. When we see the boogaloo, and we saw that in Virginia. We saw that in Virginia because Ralph Northam and the Democrats flipped the House, Senate, and the governorship. Yeah, he put himself in that position where we didn't know if he was blackface in that picture or if he's
Michael
the guy
Jackson.
in the clown mask. Yeah.
Well, either or.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think one's better than the other.
Yeah. But you push somebody so far, just like, June 4th, 2004 in Granby, Colorado with Killdozer, Marvin Heemeyer. You push the wrong fucking person too far.
I don't want to see a civil war as much as I joke about it, because that's there's
revolutions don't end well. It would be more of an evolution that we'd want to see.
Long, let's be honest.
Well, there would have to be a high turnover rate within the police force and military, and
but
that wouldn't happen. There are way too many bootlickers out there.
Like you said, where do you get to the point? And if you're looking at it from that perspective, where you want a civil war, and you look at people with the Killdozer, the problem on that front is it's only one person snapping. It's you can't you got to go after the masses, and
you would need 20% of the populace to be willing to in that situation, build a fucking bulldozer, an indestructible bulldozer, and plow over City Hall and everybody who fucked you over, all the bureaucrats and politicians.
And that's not the best. I mean, that violates the NAP.
Well, yeah, that's true technically, but he got his NAP violated. Well, the thing is, he didn't kill anybody either.
No,
he could have killed dozens of people.
You destroyed property.
Well, City Hall, which fucked him over from his own business.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that, I don't think that's morally the best way for him to go about that. But you're not going to beat the system. That's the thing. That I don't think he thought he could beat the system. Yes, he snapped. And that's the thing.
That was his way to go out.
The solution we have is that we're completely free.
He made a statement.
Yeah.
It's like Roger Peon in Vermont. The story of Roger Peon. He just got busted for pot a bunch of times, just pot possession, and he got bullied by the local cops in a small town. And he said, "Fuck it, I'm going to take my dad's tractor and drive over 7 fucking cars."
If they want to get you, look at Roger Stone. He got he got accused of perjuring himself, and he didn't lie about anything. Well, he might have, I don't know, but what he perjured himself with, it wasn't anything involved with the Trump accusation.
Exactly.
It was like where he was on a certain night when he couldn't remember something. No, that's perjury. You're going to jail.
Yep.
And then CNN got
the leak, and they were right there.
Pretty
That's pretty sketchy.
Pretty scary if you think about the FBI is tipping off CNN and you show up to arrest Roger Stone with 17 armed men.
And it was
no other news outlet was there, so someone in the only people that could have tipped off CNN was the FBI.
Yeah, and Roger Stone didn't have a violent criminal history, didn't have a passport, didn't even own a fucking gun. And they came in there with a SWAT team with CNN's cameras right there, and they had like 15 to 20. They probably had real assault rifles, not AR-15s, but 3-round burst or automatic or something.
Right, they were all ready to go.
Oh yeah, and it's like you're arresting a guy over a slight misspeaking or
it was to make Trump look bad in the Russia case, which came out to nothing. Roger Stone's now sitting in jail, and I mean it's how do you fight the system? Like I said before, I think the progressives are eventually going to win. And, Ryan said now with that attitude, like the only way I can see to stop it is voting, which isn't exactly the best answer either, because what is that? There's plenty of implications there. But how do you fight it? Is it by posting memes? Like, is it by resisting to go along with the flow? Like, is what exactly?
We are fighting in the trenches of the great meme war.
Without starting a civil war, besides a meme war, without starting an actual civil war, how do you fight? How do you keep the progressives from winning? Besides, electing Don Jr., then Ivanka, then Tiffany.
It is tough because there are people who vote for a living and then people who work for a living. If it's a form of legalized bribery if you're just a king of wealth or queen of wealth, you're getting everything you want, everything subsidized. You're on MA, SSI, whatever, all these fucking programs, subsidized housing. You don't have to pay for a fucking thing. Are you going to vote for somebody who wants to cut that and make you personally responsible for your life? No, you won't.
The more broke you make people, the more that happens. And that goes back to the whole indoctrination of going to college and putting yourself in debt, where you're now going to want a socialist answer. So eventually, that's kind of why I was talking about before with my tinfoil hat. That's how the progressives win, by they, indoctrinate entire generation plus into putting themselves in debt and thinking the only person that can help me is the government. Well, that's pure socialism right there, and there's no coming back from that. I don't see, and so that's why you got to do everything. And honestly, I know you have your things against voting, but as an American citizen, it doesn't matter if you have $1 million or $0. The one thing you have that, is equal to that other person is your one vote.
Yeah.
So if you want to keep people out of, this happening, I think that's one of the best ways to do it. And it goes back to starting at the local level and the single issue voters. And, and maybe if you don't like the tax in Duluth, you're going to move enough people to that. They're going to feel the heat. It happens in Texas. That's exactly what happened. Now,
California to Texas.
Now, Austin's booming because they were taxed so high and people were moving out. So they changed up the tax codes and now people move back in. They have the most Fortune 500 companies, I think, of anywhere outside of California. They keep moving there because there's no state income tax. Yeah. So, I mean, there's plenty of ways to go about it, I guess. It's just what's the best way as a whole. Yeah. Where, like me and you were talking earlier, not on the podcast, like, you have 3 people from the same high school, different friend groups kind of, I guess. And, 10 years later coming together with, roughly the same ideologies. I mean, we, could get into stuff that we differ on, but, how do you get the 10,000 of us, 200,000 of people who think like us, to collectively do something to keep this from happening? And I think the best answer is, voting. I don't know, maybe you disagree because
activism, shit posting memes, fighting on the trenches of the great meme war.
Yeah.
But what activism, are you talking like protests? Are you talking
protests, petitions, and kind of holding politicians accountable?
Like none of people with our ideology do. I think
that's the problem. Is
we're outside of doing protesting because we just look at that and we're like, what's the point?
It doesn't work. It makes your cause worse. Look at Black Lives Matters in Minneapolis, and it's not a bad premise.
If there's leadership in an organization that is holding these protests and holding public officials accountable at the local level, then they start to feel it, and then you can affect change on a local level voluntarily. And then obviously, if you want to throw your vote away, that's fine. I mean, I don't.
You got to find somebody that's going to unite enough of us. And like we say, there's stuff that we could butt heads over. And I think that there's people that have tried to step up, but they aren't, I don't want to say they're not diverse enough. They just don't have the appeal that, say Trump would have. He can bring in enough people, or like Hillary can bring in enough people based on this or that. It's just the libertarians can't stick to one thing to get behind one candidate.
Exactly.
We're just too, what would you call that? Fractionalized? Is that a word?
Yeah.
So, divided. I mean,
if the Libertarian Party, was bigger and more united and everything, and you had that along with a lot of great activism, volunteerism, and economic literacy and education in schools, which won't happen because, well, we don't have to get into public education right now. But I mean, if all that happened, a lot of stuff would have to happen for the paradigm to shift in a very, very short period of time.
Right. I just wonder, how do we come to this conclusion where we have people that graduated alongside us that come to just completely opposite conclusions of the way we view the world?
Yeah.
It's like, it's almost like, as we're talking about this, it's just making me think, it's kind of like this, there is class warfare, and it's the working class versus the non-working class, basically, these days.
Yes.
It's the class that doesn't want to have to work hard. They think that they are owed everything because of rich people somehow owe them something.
It's rich people's fault.
It's not fair that they have more money than they do.
I mean, I really haven't had a clear explanation as to what it really is. I'd love to sit down with somebody and get...
Why are you hoarding the wealth conversations going?
Well, yeah, I just want to see where do they really line up? Like, what is it about their lives that make them have this viewpoint? Because I could pretty much, I can see where they're coming from because I did think that way, back in the day. But as I've lived my life and I've gone through certain scenarios, I've completely taken a 180. Because I was just saying this the other day. If 18-year-old me knew like my 28-year-old self, he probably would have just offed himself. Just because he's just like, who the fuck is this guy? Just like, that's what I'm going to become. I hate that sort of a person, like people that watch football all the fucking time and did shit like this. It's just like, those people are worthless. I hate them. Now, like, fans. Now I'm obsessed. Like, there was something that happened. I just caught this bug, but it's like, I get it now. And it's just, what is it that, I don't know, gets somebody that they just get stuck in that sort of loop, because I don't think they're going anywhere. They just talk themselves in circles, and then once you back them into a corner, they just want to dip out. And that's why you'll never have somebody sitting across the table. They'll do it via the internet because it's easy for them to just walk away.
Hide behind a keyboard, which is the big...
Definitely. And the best is when they corner themselves with their own arguments, which they do if you just ask them simple questions and you just go in a circle and go in a circle. They say, oh, we hate discrimination. Okay, you hate discrimination and you don't want to discriminate, but you want to tax people at different levels, different income levels.
Right.
It's discrimination.
It's so hard to have an honest conversation. Like, we could sit here and we could talk about something we all disagree on, and I feel like we could have a civil, argument. We might get a little heated, but it's not going to turn to the point where we're screaming at each other. You talk to anybody on, the left or the right, the extreme sides, where you try and have an honest conversation, you present facts, you're not, it turns into name calling, it turns into
smearing.
It's all, you look at like, it's all logical fallacies they throw at you.
Yep.
And that's the crazy part. I mean, so like, I know we talked about it, if you look at the Bannon versus Maher conversation the other day, and I think Bannon won that, but if you actually watch it, you see that Maher is like trying to come to the middle ground with him. He's saying, I agree with you, but here's what I don't necessarily agree 100%. Bannon was so... It seems like he's so used to just having people scream that he just kept on the attack. He would never try and rationalize everything. And he, like I said, I think he won that. But I mean, kudos to Maher from the left coming through and saying, I don't like Bernie, but here's why this, and this. And then it just went full on.
You have to toe the line.
Yeah, it was about as civil as I think it could have been, or I didn't think it was uncivil, but Bannon could have been more. And that's the problem with, I think, just this country as a whole, is it's so hard to have conversations.
Yep.
I mean, me and my fiance, we're very different politically, and we don't really talk about politics that much. We just had our first political discussion the other day, but a couple months ago, and I hope she doesn't watch this, but it ended with, we got into thick argument about something, and I yelled the words liberal propaganda bullshit. And I kind of, that's
liberal
on me.
Bullshit. That's just the boom.
On me.
Yep.
I got emotional. And I threw something out there, so I'm far from innocent on something like that. But that's the problem when you get into these heated conversations and neither party is willing to concede a thought to another person. We don't know how people our age and younger and even older don't know how to have a conversation.
How do we work through that?
Because you've always been taught the two things you don't talk about are religion and politics.
Right.
I can sit and talk religion and politics all day, regardless of what you believe in or who you want to vote for. Like, you're always
what's most interesting, really.
To talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's sad, because I think that's, if you're ever going to come together as a country to compromise on your issues, because I used to be a believer in bipartisanship before I realized that it means they're both just fucking you over. But like the true bipartisanship where you can come together and agree on something, I don't ever see that happening in American politics or even American political conversation.
That's why I like watching in real time with Bill Maher, because I disagree. You know, Maher's a corporatist, shill, liberal, whatever. He's not a progressive liberal, kind of like the Bernie Sanders supporters, what have you. But he's awesome because he'll have Bannon on, he'll have Ann Coulter on, he had Milo on, Jordan Peterson was on.
Yep.
And his guests don't necessarily have the best. They always get emotional and arguing, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
But when he's able to have conversations with Steve Bannon, because that wasn't the first time Bannon was on, but Steve Bannon, Ann Coulter, had Tulsi on, Jordan Peterson, and a bunch of other people, and people that his big thing is like non-politically correct humor and stuff. So he definitely sympathizes, makes fun of the SJWs, and he did a monologue with New Rule about his new rules. That's a segment at the end with obesity.
Yeah,
and that's awesome because there's the whole body positivity movement that
I like
the SJWs of the world are pushing, and it's awesome that he's technically on that side of the aisle, but he just knows how to clap back and be able to laugh at himself and laugh at his own party, so to speak.
Well, we'll get to body positivity in a second, but the one thing that I absolutely I hate when like I like Ben Shapiro a lot. Granted, he's kind of an anti-Semite, not anti-Semite, Zionist, yeah,
neocon.
He's Jew, so he can't be anti-Semite, but he always challenges people to come on my show and talk and debate with me. Mm-hmm. Well, all that is an invite. Come on here and let me destroy you without you getting a word in edgewise. And that's the problem with people with our mindset is we say we want to bring a socialist here. And I don't blame people for not wanting to actually show up because maybe they feel like that's what's going to happen to them.
Sure.
Even if it won't,
definitely.
I can definitely see plenty of sides where the side, the people that are like-minded with us, they like Shapiro and even, Crowder's been guilty of it. He's kind of better. Even Austin Peterson, they'll bring people into debate and it just turns into a screaming match and whoever can yell louder wins. And because it's their show, they win.
Yeah.
So if you're in a position where you truly believe the opposite thing, which good for you. You're more entitled to your beliefs. I think you're wrong, but why would you want to go to a situation where you're going to embarrass yourself and make your ideas look as bad as they are? Maybe not on your point, but make your ideas look bad in front of a national audience.
Right.
So
it's like walking into the lion's den.
Yep. When somebody's wrong, what I like to do is give them when you feel
they're wrong.
Yeah. When I feel they're wrong, I just give them the floor and I'm like, speak.
Yeah.
You advertise your own ignorance and in some cases unintelligence, and it's beautiful because I'm just soaking it in. Yeah. I'm getting all of your views as you articulate them in front of us, hypothetically, if somebody was sitting right there. Mm-hmm. We're getting all of your views
from you,
and we're going to try to pick them apart in a civil and calm manner.
Yep.
And socialists and communists are the fucking loudest.
Both sides.
Yeah, I definitely have experienced that. Like there was one guy I was trying to rationalize with, big Bernie fan, all this shit. Just constantly had to do character attacks on me, make it about me, and just be like, fuck you and fuck this, and you're into this shit. It's just like making generalizations and assumptions, and I'm like, what? Can we just go on the ideas? I mean, what is it about me that like you're assuming so much about me?
Yep.
And even like Sam did that, just like, oh, you don't know what it's like to go through a hard time. It's like my wife couldn't work for a whole year and I had to figure that out. Like, what are you talking about? You don't know anything about me.
Yeah. It's all ad hominem. It's like thrown at you where if I can't beat your argument, I'm going to beat you. Mm-hmm. And that's the sad part.
Credentialism and trying to attack your credibility and stuff. You said this in the past, so whatever you're arguing now isn't relevant, or you're an asshole or a shithead.
Sure, yeah.
So I don't have to address your actual points.
Because Trump's a horrible person. His points and what he says and what he's doing means nothing.
Yep.
And granted, that whether you're a good person or not that's a whole nother debate for a whole nother day. Because I think none of us are going to sit here and say Trump's morally the best president we've ever had.
Right.
But it's anyone where if you're attacking the person and it's just not. That's not how the world works.
Well, a lot of it's subjective because people can, get bits and pieces of information and that's going to shape their view of something, like with your view of, say, George W. Bush. I think most people our age aren't going to have that sort of a viewpoint of him or that appreciation just because they never took the time to really figure out who he is. We just look at what's been said about him and then that's the way we view him. And I think that's totally Trump because, there was a time everybody loved Trump. Trump was the epitome of success. Everybody wanted to be something like Trump. He was in songs, movies, whatever. Just that was
Unless
something to
movies
strive
in Canada, then they pull him out.
Right,
of there.
then they cut him out. But I just think that the media has a lot of influence in the way we view a lot of things, and I don't know. It's hard to know what's real.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what he's really like, because when they say something about him, I'm just like, yeah, that sounds awful. But then you watch the actual bit, and you get more context to it. It's like, I probably would have said that same thing.
Yeah.
Well,
I can see myself doing that.
Okay, so I looked into it because I know that everyone thought Mayor Pete's kind of a racist. So I'm like, okay, I've heard that before, and I thought that, and I'm like, okay, I want to actually look into see what he did. Did he call someone the N-word? Did he?
Yeah.
And you look at the stuff that he did, and I can see why it's offensive, and it's racism is racism, but it's pretty mildly racist. So for example, when he became the mayor of South Bend, he fired a long-standing chief of police who's an African American within the first month he was in office to replace him with a white guy. But then you look at it and it's like, okay, well that guy was about to be in some big legal trouble for stuff, and the only way to get him out of it was to.
Was the firing performance based or?
Yeah, and then he used something with Kenyan models to sell his image,
stock
and
photo
people
or whatever,
saw right past it. And there's just a bunch of, and he compared the struggles of being gay to being black, which there's probably some merit there, but it's a little more extreme. I'm not saying it's the same to be gay as it is to be black.
This isn't the Middle East.
Hide,
yeah,
you can
not
hide
the Middle East.
You can hide being gay.
If you're gay out there, you better fucking run.
But the way he did it was pretty much pound for pound equal, when it's definitely not.
No.
Like I said, I can see some similarities on how you're treated and how you have to go about things, but it's not pound for pound equal.
It's not like during the antebellum period, being an African American individual.
I looked into that, and like I said, it's not full blown, but it's mildly racist, and then I think people run with it, and now he's, no matter what he does or says, he's a racist.
Yep, pretty much. That's what they brand him
unless
as.
you're that USA article today I showed you guys where it's okay to be racist because he's gay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you actually ever read the full article I posted on there, but it's really hard to get through without getting upset and
cringe.
Because it's not even it's so ridiculous that it's not it doesn't really make you mad. It's just so ridiculous that you're
how does somebody think
I'm
this?
reading a fairy tale, I'm reading a children's book.
Yeah.
Feed Vox.
I can't keep doing this.
That's
not because I
nowadays.
disagree so much, just because it's so abhorrently wrong.
Yeah.
And it's just a fluff piece, but I don't know. So yeah, when people say this stuff about Trump just based on his character, it definitely extends to both sides. And if the media is obviously very biased towards the left, I feel like we'd be having the same conversation calling him out if it was biased to the right.
If Trump cured cancer, people would still fucking hate him.
They'd find an issue.
And that's kind of like Republicans of Obama. There are many Republicans where Obama cured cancer, Republicans would just fucking hate him too.
Well, yeah. You're putting people out of jobs in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really have a hard time finding positive things with Obama. I'm going to be totally honest. I have a hard time remembering anything where I was just there's this about him, but I really liked that. I can't think of it.
He unilaterally shackled
race
many industries and fields with burdensome regulations and whatnot, and didn't expand drilling. And
let's just throw it out there, because I probably just was in certain circles that didn't allow me to be exposed to this information. But what is it that Obama did that we can be appreciative of?
He deport. Well, no.
Here, let's Google it.
No. From the right, he kept the right at bay because he deported more undocumented immigrants than any president in history. And,
he did
for somebody who loves
is that a good thing?
Yeah, well, no. Well, I mean, that's another debate. But for statist individuals on both sides and independents, and these people who believe in national security and all these interventions.
Did you guys know he ended the war in Iraq? Because this website says he did.
Oh yeah, did he?
Yeah.
Bin Laden,
I guess.
Well, he prosecuted more whistleblowers under the
commuted sentences of drug offenders.
Whistleblowers under the Espionage Act and all previous presidents.
What he did is he did a fine job of riding straight down the fucking middle.
Exactly.
That's not a good. Saved the U.S. auto industry.
It's terrible.
Right, that bipartisanship.
But from Republicans' perspective, he should be considered a god when it comes.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, as far as did my ideology get trampled on if I'm far right? It didn't. It did not at all. Especially when it came to the military industrial complex and all of that.
Oh yeah,
war and
approving all those massive bloated military budgets and contracts. But again, people on the right don't want to say, "Oh, I'll tell you something. I hate that Obama, but God damn it, on immigration, we got them fuckers out of there. You know that?" Because if that person says that, then they're like, vilified and
This is all
disparaged.
bullshit on
I
here.
can't say that. Right. Like
I like my third side, and it's all like he ended, or he saved the auto industry. Like,
Yeah,
no,
a
you
bailout.
didn't.
He manipulated the market.
No,
and
he didn't
propped
save
up
it.
failure.
So everyone always,
the cars for clunkers shit.
Well, it's not. That's I actually never really talked about as much as
Or cash for clunkers or whatever it was.
So
Yeah, cash for clunkers.
with the auto industry, what people don't realize is it was probably due for a bailout. Let's be honest. So everyone, all the it's the Ford Chevy debate, and well, Chevy got bailed out and Ford didn't.
Ford has received many bailouts.
Ford found on roadside dead. But
fixed to repair daily.
So you could pick any one of the big ones essentially, but then what it comes down to the capitalism side of things, where it's up to that it's up to Chevy or GM to stop this from happening again. So they got bailed out, but then they cut their product line in half. They they started focusing, and they
that was a cluster.
So I guess you could say that he
then
maybe
they had the ignition switch problem.
Well, he maybe allowed for, but regardless, if you would have bailed out Ford, they would have done the same thing, and
Exactly.
Chevy would have done the same thing they're doing now. So I guess you could maybe argue that by bailing someone out, he kind of revolutionized. And by doing that, you also created a little more competition when these non-too big companies like Ford and GM. So now you have Tesla coming around. You have Kia upping their their footprint in the market. Toyota, Honda. So I guess you
ideally
could maybe give him credit for that. But I think any president would have bailed him out.
Definitely.
Right. So you kind of
It's
gave
so
a
politically
impact to it.
Yeah, it's politically advantageous in those states where there's a lot of working class, auto workers, and you bail them out, you save their jobs, and then you can go there, do rallies and stuff.
Yeah.
But ideally, of course, in the automotive industry especially, we would want a completely free market, but the fact of the matter is, every automaker or automotive company that has ever existed has received handouts, subsidies, welfare, bailouts in some one way or another, and it doesn't matter. Japan, South Korea, America, Canada, France, Germany, it doesn't matter.
Well, when you're
One thing he did well, he shut the government down for a little bit.
Yeah, there is that.
Never gonna complain when a government
I miss
shutdown
government
happens.
shutdown memes
Yeah.
so much. Those are my favorite memes. The one I always post whenever someone said anything, it was the Randy Marsh picture being arrested. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought the government was shut down.
Yeah.
I posted
I
that
thought this
so
was
many
America.
times trolling.
Yeah. Yeah, I have so many things that I could say about the Obama presidency that just drive me up a fucking wall than any sort of positives. And it's just because of the ones, like, it's not like, oh, I'm just getting mad about something that didn't affect me. Like, no, it literally affected my income, affected my day-to-day life, you could say, just because of knowing, like, the fact that I just didn't have insurance made it so that I had to pay more money, and every day I have to deal with that.
The individual mandate sucks. I lost some money on that myself.
Dude, I lost so much money.
If you go to a gas station, you don't buy gum, you can't get charged for not buying gum. You can for...
But you can't charge people to build a wall?
I don't know.
I'm just throwing that out there. But.
Well,
Don't you hate it when your money goes towards something you don't want?
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's, I think, where we could really change things today with technology, where if you want something to be funded, you throw your money at it. Let's get rid of all taxes. All of your money goes back into your own pockets, and you
spend it as you please.
Roads.
You put it into what you want to see be successful, but then we're going to run into people that don't know how to budget. They're going to buy how many different packs of cigarettes, and that's what
and then they're going to blame the state or other people.
I mean, if you look at the way things have been privatized and the success of them with like private schools versus public schools, toll roads versus public highways, where it's so much better privatized. And I definitely understand the trying to meet in the middle again, where people are against some of those things because I can't afford that. Why should my kid not be given this opportunity because I can't afford to put them? Yeah, there's personal accountability on yourself, but now you're impacting, like in the education system, you're impacting your children who you want to do better than you. And it's up to them essentially in their personal accountability and your job to raise them to do better than you as a parent did. But, so I definitely can see, the negatives to privatizing everything, but like, let's maybe meet in the middle and start privatizing some things.
But most things are private, though. Even roads. It's not like the government is out there paving roads. It's all contracted out. So, and when government does provide their own paving service, it's obviously worse. So you might as well contract it out. Yeah, I mean, I think,
Oh boy.
I think there can be a need for some sort of government entity to be doing something. I just don't know what it is exactly. It's not like I'm completely against government, but I don't know what they should be into, whether it be roads, education, whatever it might be, just because I think statistically, and when you look at it, it's the private sector that does far better. So why do we want to turn towards public?
But does the private sector do better because of the public sector? If you eliminate the public sector altogether and you have this true competition out there,
I think it would be economically competitive.
Sounds good. The idea of it sounds good, but
when somebody says
once you pull the base out to compare it to, do you still have a need for some public services just to give people the option that if they want to go public is better, private is better. If you make everything private, then
they would still be competitive. You would still have these private schools that aren't as good. You would just be paying more for the best.
You're just competing with the other.
You would still have really cheap private schools.
Industry basis, actually. So, let's take a big example. And one thing I'm, arguably just as important to me is energy is used. The healthcare, where public healthcare. Look at the VA for everything they want to do, and the VA can't take the small numbers that they want and give them good service. So now you want to do this on a national scale. And you compare yourself to countries and the spending, blah, blah, blah. It's so illogical just because of the number difference where, of course, up in Canada, you can have all the free healthcare in the world, but there's wait times, there's all this. But the numbers in the United States are also significantly bigger population.
Yes.
And it's a significantly more unhealthy country. I mean, if you take government completely out of healthcare, and allow that to be a free market in private competition, I think that's an industry where it would thrive more, opposed to
your prices would drop.
Yes, exactly, because the pre-existing conditions would that'd be a competitive advantage for someone to say, I'll take you with this, and this place won't. So now you're giving yourself a competitive advantage, and the money that you can make, based on those people paying their insurance. You
could get a larger base because you're more attractive.
So, I mean, I think that's definitely one industry that would be great without any government interference. But I think there's definitely some out there, and I think the school system is actually one that would benefit from having a public sector.
Well, we got to see what the issues that we're seeing. Are they coming from regulation as it is? Because that's the issue with the pharmaceutical industry. Is the only reason there is issues because of government intervention in the first place through the FDA and
patent system,
and approving certain people to even be allowed to sell. So it's there is a free market in a sense where you can make drugs. We could come up with a drug and produce it and sell it, but we don't have the capital to do so.
And if we don't have the rights to that drug, it's already been.
So my fiance's family is in the medical industry. Biomedical engineering industry. So I'm not going to share too much, but I've heard a little bit about the FDA. Maddie, my fiance, she works with the FDA every day, and it's good and bad reviews. So, is it the best system out there? No, but the FDA is pretty deep, and the intricacies of what they can and can't do. And I think they're kind of maybe not to big corporations like she's part of, but or if you're part of a small startup company, it's really hard to get your foot out there in your company and create these products that are better for people because of how you're limited by the FDA.
Yes.
Well, you don't have the capital to go through all of the years you'd have to go to get the approval before you can even have any sort of revenue.
And I understand the necessity for an entity like the FDA, because you don't want all these magic pills and devices coming out that aren't thoroughly tested, aren't thoroughly approved. Yeah. But kind of like everything else we talk, where there's a good reason for government there, but it just oversteps at a certain point. It gets too big. Where it's good to have the FDA to approve stuff like this, but then they're too big that it's
too big, too corrupt.
It's doing it's exactly what it was supposed to be. It's fighting against that now.
Well, it's supposed to be preventing this, and it's actually
it's becoming
allowing that
to
happen.
To be. It's its own enemy.
It just essentially grants monopolies by approving certain drugs and allowing only one company to sell it so they can charge whatever they want. And then when companies say, we can make that same exact drug and put it on the shelves as a generic, and we can cut costs significantly, they're just kind of shut out of it because they don't have the lobbying power or the company that is making that particular prescription pill or whatever.
Well, they just make it so you don't get approved for 5 years, and you have to figure out how is my company going to survive for 5 years without any sort of revenue.
Exactly.
Well,
who's going to be able to make that?
One thing I hate is when people try and blame like the cost of healthcare. Let's just be like honest; it is pretty ridiculous. Like if you go to the hospital, it's expensive, and like people want to blame healthcare for that, and it's not 100%. The thing is, you can blame the patent system, you can blame big pharma. The problem is that it's such a mixing pot of all these things together that you're never going to, it's like having a knot in your shoelace that you're never going to be able to untie.
Yeah.
It's like if you're fishing and you get a big old knot in your fishing line, what do? You cut it off and start over. You can't do that with this situation. So how do you fix the cost of healthcare? Would privatizing everything be great? That's great for the insurance companies because insurance will be less, but that's not going to stop big pharma from charging as much. It's not going to stop the patent system from creating situations
that's
like
assuming
EpiPen.
If there was no patent system, that would have to go along with the privatization of healthcare to get costs extremely down. If there's still a patent system, even with a lot of deregulation and untangling in the healthcare system, costs are still going to be pretty high.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's just with the way the patent system is, because that's a whole separate issue that is tied into so many different markets, not just pharmaceutical. Then
a piece of gauze this big at a hospital, one single piece is, probably costs less than 3 cents to make.
Oh yeah,
they charge you $28 for that.
Yep.
Why is it? Is it to pay doctor salaries? I don't think so, because you're probably getting enough generation of revenue from other outlets.
It's all the overhead.
It's stuff like that. I can't imagine that the overhead's as big as the prices of the magical.
They have to compensate for it in some way, though.
I can't imagine that it's as
it is,
for something like a piece of gauze. So that I understand some things, but you got to understand the price of things aren't regulated either.
Right.
So, and that's fine, but it's kind of like if you're charging however much you want for something, and then you're getting paid for it regardless, you're going to keep charging more. So how do you keep that from happening? Is it wiping out public insurance and going privatizing insurance isn't going to necessarily stop that either?
It's still going to be somewhat of a racket, or what resembles a racket, because hospitals will realize, hey, most people are insured, so we can.
Right. Well, and that became the issue with Obamacare, is when you make it so everybody's insured, then we can basically charge whatever.
Exactly.
It raised all the rates. Well, because then also everybody's approved for everything. I mean, there wasn't any sort of, well, we're not going to cover that. We're not going to cover that. It's like, no, everything's covered. So if everything's covered, this is the price. Everybody's premiums need to be at least this, and that just.
And that's the same thing that would happen to free college.
Completely fucked the market. Yeah. My God.
Well, the biggest thing that it did too, Obamacare did, I think the biggest problem with it necessarily isn't just allowing for that to happen, is you eliminated all your competition in your small little insurance company. Those small little insurance companies are what was helping keep prices lower. I mean, because even before Obamacare, it wasn't not cheap to go to the hospital.
No.
But it was less. But now that you bring this in, you eliminate all those small companies. So now you have all these big dogs, and that's gonna now everyone knows the price war.
One of the things, Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz's I believe it was a CNN town hall debate on healthcare. Ted Cruz talked about was Obamacare was basically written by the insurance companies, and he looked at Bernie when he said this. He said the top 5 biggest health insurance companies in the entire country gained market share. After the implementation of Obamacare, or after it was passed.
That whole debate, like, that was a joke. And Bernie, like, when he's talking to these people, he's like, just pay more money.
Yeah. Like
just do it.
When the florist asks, like, I have to raise my prices if I'm forced to provide health insurance for my
I can't hire any more people, because once I have over 50 people, all of a sudden I have X amount of dollars I have to fork over just because of that one body.
Yeah.
So I can't cross this line that you drew in the sand. So I can't grow my company any further. And I can't provide for my people because you made it so if I make so much money, I now have to provide this. So it's just, they completely stranglehold small businesses.
That's the problem with like communists and socialists. They think that every single business owner's main goal is to screw their employee.
Exactly.
It's not.
That's the central point of their argument.
If you're like 3M and you're that big, then maybe. But like if you're a Papa Murphy's or Papa John's, I'm sorry, in Duluth, Minnesota, Ryan, is your job as a general manager to make sure your employees hate your guts?
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely.
No, that's the problem that I think that
make it a class warfare thing.
Yeah, and I think that the worst thing the Obama era did was it was probably one of the worst presidencies for small business in the last 50 years.
There's no doubt about it.
Without question.
Like maybe Carter, but I mean,
I don't know. I don't know enough about all those previous presidencies and administrations, but the ones that I've experienced so far in life, I think Obama definitely hit me the most.
No doubt.
And just killing small businesses.
Trump's trying to catch up to him with the trade war, though.
Yeah.
Well, if the price of the scotch go up, I'm not going to freaking vote for that guy. I'll tell you that much. Johnny Walker keeps posting advertisements right now saying, if these tariffs don't end, the price of scotch is going to go up. And I'm like, God damn it, I'm going to start drinking bourbon.
All right, dude. Should we end it there?
Yeah.
If you want to.
Good talk, boys. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Absolutely.
Sure.
If I
Come
could
up again
contribute,
anytime.
Maybe
Yeah.
if you need me to ring it on the phone and be part of this,
Yeah.
if you figure that out, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
We can get that
I'll be
organized.
back up for another one talking careers next time I'm up here and the workplace. And
Yeah. My God,
workforce.
I want to jump into that right now for another 2 hours,
dude.
but
We can
we'll
record
save
another
it.
one.
We'll
Yeah.
table that conversation.
Save that space.
Sounds good. Thanks,
All right.
guys. Thanks
Sounds
for
good,
listening,
man.
everyone.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
This one's saved, right?